10 Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 309. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 309 of the 10 Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us yet again. And if you are new to the show, welcome in. This episode, as always, with the fourth episode of the month, is going to be our tune of the month. And as we usually do, we're going to do it on the same tune that our lick of the month is from. So we're going to be looking at the great George Gershwin tune, But Not For Me. Before we jump into the show, just wanted to remind you that this is a listener-supported podcast, which means that we do not have any advertisements on the show, except for this very one. Instead, we rely on support from listeners just like you. A small monthly donation gets you a PDF and audio examples to every single episode that we have ever done, which is adding up to be quite a few at this point. So if you are interested in supporting the show, please go to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com. Click on one of the Patreon banners. It'll bring you over to that platform and give you all the information and instructions that you need to get signed up, become a supporter, and keep this show coming at you week in and week out in high quality. Quick shout out to some of our new patrons this week. Thank you to our new $5 patrons, Patrick, Mattia, and Lemon Zest. And thank you to our new $3 patron, John. Thank you guys so much for joining up, becoming a part of the 10 Minute Jazz Lesson family. And of course, everybody else over there that's been members for months and years. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We could not do this without you. So again, 10minutejazzlesson.com. Click on one of the Patreon banners. Get yourself signed up today. All right, so let's dive into our tune of the month. So we took a look at an excellent chorus from Roy Hargrove solo on But Not For Me last week. And this week, I figured I would try to recreate some of those concepts in an etude. So when I was writing this etude, a lot of the harmonic concepts are not very specific. I was just writing what I felt sounded good, right? So keep that in mind as you're going through and maybe you're dissecting some of these lines. There isn't really a goal as far as the harmonic content. I just wanted to write something that sounded cool, frankly. So you can still go through, steal as many lines as you want, start studying what I was trying to do harmonically. But just to let you know, I wasn't trying to really copy Roy Hargrove or anything like that, or do anything specific like a diminished sound. I was really just trying to go with the flow and write something that I thought was acceptable harmonically. Where I did try to imitate some of those things that we talked about last week, and if you haven't checked out last week's Lick of the Month episode, go back and do that now, because we in depth talked about some of the things that Roy is doing that makes this solo so effective. So one of them was his pacing. He would play this slew of really complicated bebop-oriented eighth notes, and then after a long phrase of that, he would switch to longer notes, longer duration notes, so quarter notes, half notes, sometimes even whole notes. That is definitely one thing that I am trying to recreate in this particular etude that you're about to hear. The second thing was, and we talked about this as maybe being the most important thing in Roy's soloistic statement, is that he wasn't afraid to use some space in his solo. He really was able to take multiple measures off at a time. And I gotta say, I don't think I did as good of a job as he did, right? There's less space in my solo. And what I try to do when I put out these etudes is give you an accurate representation of my thought process. And I think if I had time to go back and really nail this thing down and spend hours and hours and hours on it, I would have done a better job with space. So that's something that I still struggle with, is I gotta use more space in my solos. So you will definitely see some longer rests, but I would like to go back and sort of redo this etude at some point and put more space into it. And the reason I didn't do that is to just kind of show you that, it is a work in progress, okay? And frankly, I just don't have enough hours in the day to put, 2-3 hours into this etude, which is unfortunate, but true. So I'm just kind of coming clean with all of you that I would have put more space to try to be more like Roy in this particular etude. But those are the two things that I was really focusing on. I was trying to create a nice interplay between eighth note based lines that are very, very busy, and then notes that are a little bit longer. So quarter notes and half notes were really what I was thinking. And then obviously, as I just talked about, the second thing was trying to incorporate some space. Now, I wrote this with the same tempo in mind as Roy was playing at. So it's about 200 BPM. And what I want you to really do is challenge yourself to be able to play at that tempo. It may not happen right away, but your goal should be to work it up to that 200, because that's what I was thinking when I wrote it. So everything that I wrote kind of fits into that tempo nicely. Okay, so let's listen to the etude all the way through, and then we're going to talk about the form, because this relates to the ongoing series that's happening on the podcast of learning tunes. This is a tricky one, tricky chord progression here. So let's listen to the etude, and then we'll go over the chord progression together. So that's going to be a tricky one, definitely. And again, I wrote it on saxophone, so I have no idea how that's going to lay on other instruments, but that one might take you a while to get under the fingers and be able to play at that full tempo. All right. So let's talk about the chord progression, because we've talked a lot about memorizing stuff, right? And this is one of the trickier ones. I remember that when I was learning this, it took me a long time, because the chord progression is very deceiving, and there's a lot of harmonic movement, a lot of real nuance in this particular tune. So let's jump in and talk about this one. All right, so first thing to know is that it is in the key of concert E flat. That is our home key. Okay, so when we start, what we see is a 5 of 5, which is also known as major 2 for 1 bar. Then that goes to the same chord but minor and kicks off a 2, 5, 1 in bar 3. Then we have a 3, 6, back to that 5 of 5 or major 2, however you want to think about it. Then back to 2, 5, back to 1. Now, here coming up, we have our first modulation. So we are modulating to the key of concert A flat by way of a 2-5 that starts in measure 8. Now we arrive in the key of concert A flat. Then we have a really interesting chord progression. That A flat chord becomes minor. And what it looks like we're doing is we're doing a 2-5 to G flat, 2, 5. But instead what happens is this turns into a backdoor progression back to the key of concert E flat. So we get that. Now, if you're not sure what a backdoor progression is, go and find our episode on that, and it will fully explain it. All right. So then we hang out on the 1 chord for 2 measures. Then we do this interesting thing where we look like we're doing a 2-5, starting in bar 13, to the key of B flat, but we're not. This is a deceptive cadence. We have a 2, 5 in B flat, but then all of a sudden that 5 chord becomes minor and we see a 2-5 starting back to the key of E flat. And then another deceptive cadence, because guess what? We're not going back to the key of E flat. Instead, we're going to kick off exactly what happened at the beginning again in the second half. So we're going to go back to that major 2, and then we're doing our 2, 5 in the key of E flat. Then we have 3, 6, back to 2, then 2, 5, back to E flat. And then we have our 2, 5 in the key of A flat again. Then we have our backdoor progression again, back to E flat. Now this time, we're just going to finish up the tune. This is the only difference between the first half of the tune. We're just going to finish up the tune with a straight up, starting in 29, 2, 5, back to E flat. Okay, so this tune, I would call it A, B, and each section is 16 bars, totaling up to 32. All right. So the chord progression really kind of tricky, a lot going on. It's one of the things that makes the chord progression so cool, but this one might take you a while to actually memorize the true structure of this tune and actually what's going on, not just trying to commit each chord to memory, actually learning the structure. So here's what you could do. After you learn the etude, get that on your fingers, get the sound of the chords in your ear, you could try to really, really nail down that structure, and maybe make a list of Roman numerals over the top of everything. And then you could go back to what we talked about in one of the previous episodes on learning tunes and try to put it in one more key. And that would probably really solidify everything in terms of how does this tune actually work. Then when you come back to the original key, it honestly feels pretty easy. But get ready for this tune. It's kind of a tricky one, and it may take you a while, a little bit longer than a lot of the other standards. The nice part is that if you learn the A section, the B section is very, very similar. It only departs on the last 4 bars. So if you learn 16 bars, really learn what's going on, you kind of know the majority of the tune. And then in the second half, you just end with that straight up 2-5-1. Okay? All right, hopefully this was helpful. Remember, you can find everything, the etude, a backing track, me playing the etude as a demo. I'm even going to throw some slower backing tracks in there for all the Patreon members. You can find that over on Patreon, 10minutejazzlesson.com. Click on one of the Patreon banners, and you get access to every single PDF that we've ever put out, which is 309 episodes worth at this point. Thank you to everybody that is supporting. Let me know if you have any questions. The best place to get in touch is the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Community Facebook group. You can also email me at 10minutejazzlesson@gmail.com. Hope you're all doing well out there. As always, staying safe and healthy. I'm going to play the etude one more time here at the end, and we will see you all next time with a brand new episode. Talk to you soon, everybody. Bye.